Growing up, Ann Patchett knew that she wanted to be one thing and one thing only. She dreamed of becoming a writer. She wanted to become a big writer of big books. She didn't like sports. She didn't like clubs. She didn't like socializing. She loved books. She loved reading books and learning how to write them. And she accomplished her childhood dreams abundantly so. Her books, like Bel Canto, State of Wonder, The Dutch House, are both commercial and critical successes. Ann Patchett is recognized as one of the truly great living American authors of our time. And yet, while Ann Patchett fulfilled dreams of her childhood, she found that she has work to do, some issues that arose in her childhood, namely her father, Frank. Her father, Frank, never saw her as a writer, never got her as a writer, and never supported her dreams of becoming a writer. In fact, her father, Frank, told her repeatedly and painfully and explicitly that she should not become a writer. He would tell her, you've got to do something athletic. You've got to learn to play volleyball. You've got to learn to play tennis. But Dad, I don't love sports, and I don't want to play tennis, and I don't want to play volleyball. That didn't stop Frank from waking her up and her sister Heather up very early, 6 a.m., to go to an empty parking lot by the supermarket Ralph's and to play tennis against the big brick wall in the empty parking lot, even though she had no interest in doing this. You've got to learn to do more socially, join clubs. But Dad, I don't want to join clubs. I want to write books. And then he said to her something that she never forgot. He said to her, Ann, here's why you can't become a writer. Because when you get to become an adult, you're going to get married, and then you're going to get divorced, and then you're going to have 2 children to raise. He told this to her when she was a girl. And you're going to have to raise these children, and you're not going to be able to provide for them if you're a writer. You've got to be practical. You can't be selfish. He said to her, become a dental hygienist. I don't want to be a dental hygienist. He said to her, get a job on an ocean liner, on a cruise. Dad, I don't want to do that. That's not me. Well, meanwhile, she had a sister, has a sister named Heather. And unlike Ann, Heather would listen to their father. Their father said to Heather, listen, you got to be practical. I want you to go to law school and to become a lawyer. And Heather did that, but not Ann. And she conveys in this most recent New Yorker article, a profile about this issue, she conveys what it was like to get advice from her father unheeded, unneeded, and unwanted. The phone would ring, and it's her dad dispensing advice. And she said, I would hold the receiver away from my ear, and my dad would be giving this advice that didn't see me, that didn't connect with me. And I would think to myself, I am a duck, and it is raining outside. Now, what happens to us when we are the duck, and it's raining outside on us? What happens when people who love us in their own way don't see us for who we are? What happens when people who love us in their own way kind of impose themselves on us? Now, that's complex enough when they're living. When they're living, you can always have an Elul conversation and try to mend it. You can always have an Elul conversation and say, I know you love me, I love you, but you're not seeing me. Let's work on this. But what do you do when they've passed and you can't have that Elul conversation? And you have this mixed legacy of love, and they're not being able to see you. I've been a rabbi for 24 years. I've been with families for 24 years who have lost loved ones. And I can tell you what I hear from families that is the single greatest compliment that they can ever pay as a category. The greatest single compliment they can ever pay a loved one who has died. And conversely, what the single greatest critique that they can ever pay is. The greatest compliment is that the person who passed away was non-judgmental. They didn't judge me. They loved me. They didn't judge me. They loved me. They loved me for who I am. They celebrated me for who I am. They saw me for who I am. They valued me for who I am. They didn't impose. I'm very different from them. They're very different from me, but they loved me for me. Non-judgmental is the greatest compliment in the book. And here's the greatest critique. They were very critical. They judged me. And there's different ways that they put it. They had very high standards. Or this is when you hear the word exacting. They had very exacting standard. Or the word demand. They demanded a lot. Now here's the thing. When your loved one was non-judgmental, that leaves a legacy of love. Just so easy to love. It's just so easy to love somebody who loves you. But when the person who passed away loved you in their own way, but was critical and judgmental, that leaves residue, complexity. What do we do? What do we do with residue? What do we do with residue? And today is super helpful in the residue department. Today is Shmini Atzeret. So Shmini, you all know, means 8 or 8th, and Atzeret means lingering. It's the day of lingering. The idea is that the holidays are over. Rosh Hashanah, over. Yom Kippur, over. Sukkot, over. The days are over, so we have one day left to linger and to reflect on what did it mean. And on this day of lingering, we spend a morning lingering about those whom we have loved and those we have lost. On the day of lingering, we think about what did their lives mean to us when they were living? What do their lives mean to us now? And often, if there's residue, that takes work. So Ann Patchett had this residue, and her father passed away. So she had this kind of work to do, and that's what the article in the New Yorker was about. And what she does with her father, who loved her in his own way, she offers 3 moves that are so helpful to us now. Here's her first move. Her first move when thinking about her father is start with the good. And that's our first move now, as we're going to say Yizkor in a few minutes. Start with the good. And by the way, that's the first move of Rabbi Nachman of Wroclaw, the Hasidic master. I just love this teaching, which is that when you deal with somebody who's difficult and challenging, rare is the person who is 100% difficult and 100% challenging. Almost everybody you encounter has something good. Start with the good. When Ann Patchett starts with the good, thinking about her dad, Frank, there's a lot of good to find. First of all, ironically enough, he loved books. He ordered books, and he read books, and they read books together. They read Pride and Prejudice and discussed it together. They read Red Badge of Courage and discussed it together. They read Anna Karenina and discussed it together. They shared a love of books, and not only books. Ann Patchett is able to summon the following beautiful memory from her childhood. And her father is this police captain for the Los Angeles Police Department. And here's her memory. When my father came home from work, a gun holstered on the back of his belt beneath his suit jacket. I stood on his shoes so that we could dance. My father singing and swaying us back and forth. Embrace me, my sweet, embraceable you. Dear God, how I loved him, how he loved me. When we start with the good, there is almost always beautiful good to find. And yet, for all of this good, the fact remains that Frank, who danced with his daughter, Frank, who loved books and discussed them with his daughter, Frank persistently refused to see his daughter's dream of becoming a writer. What does she do with that? That leads to her second move, which is try to understand the bad, try to frame the bad, try to reframe the bad, try to contextualize and recontextualize the bad. Where did the bad come from? After all, her dad really loved her. So if he really loved her, why couldn't he see her? And in thinking deeply about that, trying to reframe the bad, she comes up with two things. She tries to see the world from his point of view. This is, the Atticus Finch line in To Kill a Mockingbird. You don't really understand somebody until you stand in their shoes. She tries to stand in his shoes. And she points to two things. First of all, her dad, Frank, grew up in 3 different contexts that were all extremely hierarchical, all extremely the case that the person who's on top gives an order and the person, the subordinate, does the order. So he's very active in his Catholic faith in the Catholic Church. When a Catholic superior gives an order, the subordinate does it. He was in the Navy, and that's a classic case. When the commander gives an order, the subordinate does it. And he was in the police department, and the police department's very hierarchical. The higher up police officer gives an order, the person who's lower on the chain follows it. And so he was just used to commands and orders being obeyed, and therefore he thought it was kind of only natural. He's the father, Anne and Heather are his daughters. It's only natural for him to give orders and only natural for them to do it. They didn't see the world, or Anne didn't see the world that way, but that's how he saw the world. The other way in which she thought deeply about him was the way in which poverty seared his soul. Her father, Frank, was one of 7 children, and his father, her paternal grandfather, really struggled to make a living. And the family story that takes this in is her paternal grandfather, Frank's father, is literally pounding the pavement in Los Angeles, California, looking for a job. His wife and 7 children are hungry at home, and he himself has 1 sandwich. He carries around 1 sandwich all day long as he's pounding the pavement trying to find a job. And then when Frank himself gets out of the military, gets out of the Navy, he's able to find a job working in a liquor store, but he doesn't have enough money for a home. And he works all day, and then he spends the night sleeping on a porch near the liquor store. And he just wanted to spare his daughter from the kind of poverty that he and his family knew only too well. When Ann Patchett tries to see the world from her dad's point of view, he's comfortable with command and control in the Navy, in the police department, in his Catholic faith. And he was seared and scarred and shaped by poverty. She can at least understand where her dad is coming from and muster a modicum of empathy for her father, even though what he said to her really hurt. Start with the good, frame and reframe the bad. And this is her third move, and this is just so powerful. Take the bad and grow from it. Take the bad and grow from it. And this is just so fabulous, what she says. Her dad did not see her and did not accept her, could not believe in her dreams. So this is what she says. I quote her. It turns out that having someone who believed in my failure more than in my success kept me alert. It made me fierce without ever meaning to. My father taught me at an early age to give up on the idea of approval. My father taught me at an early age to give up on the idea of approval. P.S. Could you imagine how you would be in life, how much stronger you would be in life if you were not thirsting for approval? How much stronger you would be in life if the opinion that mattered about how you were doing was your own sense and that you didn't live off of the compliments or the critiques of other people. Back to Ann Patchett. I wish I could bottle that freedom now and give it to every young writer I meet with an extra bottle for the women. Ann Patchett's marvelous essay is just a total gift to us now that we're about to recite Iskor. Start with the good, reframe the bad, and grow from it. Our loved ones are gone, but we are not done with them and their lives. To love is to interpret and to reinterpret. To love is to work through in life and as we remember them now.